this piece of story. And I think, when we look back across time, right, campfire conversations, we told stories. Pictographs painted on the walls of caves were a way to tell a story. Letters mailed across the sea in a very old school format of sharing, right? Even the spaces that we design tell stories, right? We got to be in a panel earlier today talking about modern learning space. 2 years ago at my school, we started to rethink learning spaces. And as we pulled back layers of carpet in my building from 1892, we uncovered these scars on the floor. Marks left behind from a day when desks were bolted to the floor. And as I walked around this space and counted the 47 marks on the floor, it was like time travel. And I realized that this room told a story. And the story that it told was that of learning, which was one directional, right? An environment where collaboration was absent. It's really hard to turn and talk when your desk is bolted to the floor, right? And I think this learning space told a story of a grown-up in the room imparting knowledge along pupils, right? And so often in education, it's hard to measure if we're making progress. And as I stood in this learning space, progress was evident, and I thought, I'm so glad learning doesn't look like this anymore, right? Well, the tools and the times have absolutely changed, but I think we find ourselves still seeking story, right? Social media, instantaneous access are all ways for us to tell different stories. And as we go about this storytelling process, I think it's important for us to situate ourselves in the story space. And so right now what I would like you guys to do is a practice that we refer to as 3, 2, 1. And I want you just to take a couple seconds and think about story in your life. Maybe on the notes feature on your phone or on a piece of scratch paper, or if you have your device open, take a moment to jot some thinking down. And what I would like you to reflect upon are 3 stories from your personal life that make you who you are. What are 2 media stories from the past year that even after the story was over, you continue to think about? And see if you can think of one thing that you'd like to change in the world. All right, so 3 stories about yourself, 2 media stories, 1 thing you'd like to change in the world. I'll give you about 2 minutes for you to jot some thinking. All right, so go ahead, reflect. Maybe just 1 more minute or so. All right, I can hear some rumbling starting to go on, people starting to talk. So what I want you guys to do is In just a second, I'm going to have you find a partner and do some sharing. You don't have to share all of the ideas that you wrote down, but if you could pick one idea from each category, what's one personal story, one media story, and one thing you'd like to change in the world, right? We don't need to force our students to share everything that's in their heart, but hopefully they can find one thing from each category. So just take a moment, turn and talk with someone near you, and see if you can share one from each category. Go ahead. All right, friends, let's start to bring it back together. I know it's hard because we all have a variety of different stories. Thanks, everybody. As I walked around, I listened into a couple different groups and I heard stories of a first move overseas, a change of country or city or school and how that really shaped you. I heard of the birth of children and how that's a moment that has defined you. Any brave friends out there willing to share something that was a big part of their personal story? Go ahead. First library card, right? That changes your story. Librarians are like, yes, that made our whole conference, right? Thank you, librarians. See, years later, still an impact. Anyone else have something to share? Nothing's going to top that. All right, media stories from the past year. What was a media story that you continued to think about? Go ahead. Yeah, talk about living it, right? Like, this is, no wonder I'm exhausted, right? The U.S. presidential election, yeah. Lifelong learning, right? Awesome. What's one thing you'd like to change in the world? What was it? Oh, gender equity, yes. What else? I heard someone else. Plastic, right? How people are using plastic. Other thoughts? poverty, right? I think there are a lot of stories that define us, and it's the stories that we tell about ourselves, the stories that we hear, right? The issues that stick in our heart. And I think, this piece of story has been around forever, right? Like, these are the stories that are impacting us currently. But if we look back across time, we can see how story has absolutely shaped our culture. Right? So I want you just to take a moment, think back, let's say over the last 4,000 years, right? What do you think the big stories were in human history that changed how we act, who we are, or had a big impact? Just think back. What pops into your mind? Right? I hear some people turning and talking. Good idea, right? So I want to share with you a graph. And this graph is from Andrew McAfee and his book, The Second Machine Age, an incredible read. He's working on a couple new projects and has some new titles to come. But what he found was that as we look back across the course of human history, there wasn't a lot of stories that changed how we interact, right? If you look across the y-axis, we can see population by the millions, time across the x there. And what we're seeing is population growth in the east and west, represented by the black and the blue line, respectively, right? And so we can see Confucius, the Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, the Renaissance, the Black Death, right? The Ottoman Empire. None of these really had a big impact on human population until we got almost to the end there. And the piece that changed us is actually a tech story, right? The tinkering of James Watt leads to the steam engine, which leads to the internal combustion engine, and thus goes innovation. And as we have new opportunities to do work, we have different ways to use our time, and population starts to grow. And so we can see this idea of innovation has always been a piece of our story. And that tech was a story changer, and it's been a story changer for our classrooms and schools as well, right? As early adopters, many of us were excited as mobile devices came into our classrooms, and at times we weren't sure what to do with them, but we were going to do something, right? And I think we got a little bit distracted by what the tech can do and the shininess of it all. And I think Ewan said yesterday, sometimes more isn't better, right? Sometimes less, in fact, really is more. And I think we're at that moment where we need to press pause and think about what we're doing with the technology. Why are we using this? How can we use these tools to change the world? I think the best thing we can do is use technology to amplify student story, right? No longer is write it down or read the words the only option. Instead, we can leverage technology to post a blog, make a movie, sing a song, share online. And it's this opportunity where we bring the world to our kids on a regular basis. And we scale that to see all the powerful things they can do. I work at a underprivileged school in Chicago where 97% of our students receive free lunch. 69% of kids are at grade level, and all but 3 identify as Black. And I think the labels that we put upon kids is part of their story, right? Whether they like it or not, those words define who they are. But I think what we really need to do, the story that we should look at, is that all of these kids are awesome. And that is the data that truly matters. We're finding many ways to use technology to shift their story. And one of the ways we're doing it is by inviting kids to see themselves, right? This is Layla. She's one of our kindergartners, and I pushed into her classroom last year to help her classroom teacher launch an inquiry into rainforests. topic they were studying, we decided that the kids were going to use maps in order to find rainforests around the world. And so I modeled it, I partnered kids up so they would have a scaffold and a support, and then I turned it over to students, and within 3 seconds, the first friend said, "Hey, what's the blue dot for?" And then every single child in the room was looking for that blue dot. And as they zoomed in, someone said, "Hey, it says Chicago. I live in Chicago." And then 24 other people said, "I live in Chicago too. So do I. And we saw very quickly that sometimes our objectives as a grown-up was not the same objective that the kids had, right? And maybe we should start with where we are instead of looking for rainforests around the world. And so a couple precocious kids continued to zoom in, and they were able to see the play lot of our school. And then just a few, Layla being one of them, could back map from our play lot through the streets to find her house. And when she found her house, she said this. I was sitting next to her and I typed it into my phone right away because I never wanted to misquote her. And this is the best photo I got of her because she was so intent on what she did. She never thought her house was important enough to be anything. And then she saw it. It brought me joy to see my house. For Layla to see her home and her community valued was enough to gain her a place on the map, right? That signaled that she mattered. A map became a vehicle for Layla's story, right? And this is the piece that we teach them. You matter. When we look at additional ways that story is impacting us and changing who we are as thinkers and learners, we can look at the data. Just last month, a new study came out that showed in American homes, 98% of families with children under 8 now have access to mobile devices. And we can see how quickly those numbers have changed across the years. How does this impact our instruction, right? We're talking about, we're dealing with kids that are spending time on YouTube, right? As a result, our instruction must change. Recent data from the Clicks, Taps, and Swipes report shows that 81% of 6 to 8-year-olds are using YouTube regularly. I have to admit that number caused me to hyperventilate for a couple of days. And then as I sat with the information and thought about it, I recognized that here our kids are developing readers, right? YouTube is a way for them to get information. Regardless of where they are, they need instruction. And I think that's where we come in. And so when we see the face of changing learners, we can look at Patrick, another kindergartner at our school. Immigrant, youngest of 3, lover of life, lacks focus. And there was a time when kindergarten was a little bumpy for Patrick, and so he spent some time in my classroom. When he came into my classroom, we were working on projects for the Global Student News Network, an organization started by kids, for kids, out of St. Louis. And what they will do is give feedback on any digital media product that kids want to submit, as well as give it an audience. And so Patrick was one of the younger submissions to the website, and so his work was featured on the homepage. And when you see your work published for the very first time, it changes you, and it looks like this.
Dad, oh, wait, wow! Wait, Malay and me? Bubba, we can't see Malay's face. Read it. Laughing. Yeah. Thinking. This is school.
So all of those red dots are people that have seen your video.
Yay!
How many people do you think?
1, 2, 3,
Say there.
14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. I can't count that. That says Chicago. People watched the video that I made. Miss Davis. Miss Z made a video of me and all these red dots around the world. That's people that watched it. I was in TV.
You know exactly what he wants to do tomorrow, right? Do it again. It's that sense of agency stuff that Peter Johnson has talked so richly about. I'm the kind of kid who can make a movie and share it with the world, right? And we show kids that the work they do has relevance in the world. And that's exactly what we teach them, right? Their stories belong in this world and have a place. What we found is that when we invite kids into matters of significance, they lean in time and time again. And when we invite them in, we make it about kids, and we put them at the heart of learning. Take a look at this project that fourth graders did. They were doing a writing workshop unit on stories they had heard about themselves, and then collaborated together to make this.
The lie. Muslims are terrorists.
Black boys are bad.
Girls are not athletic.
Latinos can't speak English well.
Chechens are a bad influence on others.
Africans aren't smart.
Asians can't play sports.
All black people are thieves.
People from Mexico bring nothing good.
I'm too pretty to be Togolese.
The lie. All white people are racist.
The truth. I'm white and I'm not racist. I care for people who are of another race.
I may have brown skin, but I'm the same as you. If you test me, I will succeed. And you underestimate me by the color of my skin, I'm tired of the hurtful words.
Latinos like me can speak English well. They are learning, doing their best. Have you learned a second language? It's hard, and yet people yell at Latinos because they don't understand what they're saying.
Why? Why do they say that? Why do they? What did I ever do to you to make you judge me and say that? You should know, not all Muslims are terrorists.
But you push me down just to pull yourself up. You use lies to make me feel like that's what I really am. Like I really am a thief. But I know I'm not a thief because I still am just like you.
So you shouldn't judge me or people like me. So why are you judging them? You don't know them. So stop the lies. Don't let the others brainwash you.
Those negative words are a noisy room full of rumors. I just want to cover my ears and just forget.
What is the truth? I know the truth. The truth that lies in my heart. The truth about black boys. I am black. This is me. The lie about black boys that I don't believe in. And I know it's not the truth. Because the truth that is real is my truth.
Girls can definitely be athletic.
I am Asian. I play soccer.
I can be pretty and be Togolese. Beautiful people come from all over the world.
I am Latino, and I can speak English.
I'm not a thief. I've never stolen anything.
I'm not a terrorist, so think again.
I am black. I am not aggressive. I would not harm anyone.
Everybody deserves equal rights. Everybody deserves respect for who they are. Racist people don't believe these things. I'm not one. I am you.
People are people, right? What if we teach kids to hear the stories of others? And I think it begs the question, and Alec, kind of touched on this yesterday, what if we taught students that these devices were empathy machines, that you could take perspective of someone else and truly hear those stories that are around you? Might that change how we treat each other or how we understand each other as part of the global community? And I think as we look at some of these new tools, so often as the adult in the room, we need to be brave enough to step aside and to take ourselves out of the picture, right? We have to give kids time and space and the moment to empower them to see they can be the change that they want in the world. Like Marley, one of my Instagram friends, 11 years old, and when she was in 6th grade, she recognized at school that she wasn't reading any books about black girls that looked like herself. And she, in her own words, says, all we were reading were books about white boys and their dogs. Shiloh 1, Shiloh 2, where the red fern grows. And like she went on with the list. And so she used her Instagram to start a campaign to collect 1,000 Black girl books. And as she got attention and people started following her, she also built a database of all the books that she received that now you can access as educators, as librarians, as parents, and sort them by reading level as well as by topic. And she didn't stop at 1,000 books. She continued on, and she certainly doesn't need me to tell her story. Take a peek at this.
So the 1,000 Black Girl Books campaign is a social action project in which I have collected almost 10,000 books now, in which Black girls are the main characters and been able to donate them to places all across the world. I love reading. I thought that there was a lack of kids being able to understand the world around them and not just think about themselves as a main character, but to think about everybody else and to understand the difference and the beauty in everybody else. So the books that we collect, they all go to different schools. So we try to mix it up and make sure that everyone can still learn about the experiences of Black girls, regardless of your race or gender. So we've reached almost 10,000 books at the moment. So we want to continue to donate and continue to work so that other kids all throughout, whether it's Florida or Japan or Indonesia or Russia, can all understand the stories of Black girls. I try to make my mark on history, and that this kind of proves that I'm really, really, really trying hard and that I'm pushing the boundaries of what people think kids can do. I really just want to make sure that this is paving a way for other girls and other Black people to be able to grow and to show their communities how strong and how entrepreneurial and how brave they are.
Just last month, she was named to Forbes' 30 Under 30 list as the youngest member of this group. Next week, her book comes out and will be published by Scholastic. Marley Diaz does it, and so can you, right? This is exactly what we want to teach them, that you can be the architect, you can address an issue, and create the future that you want to see. And so we're looking for all of these opportunities to tell our stories, to hear the stories of others, and then to use the power of story to address issues, right? If you can take out your device and maybe just take 1 minute to think, what are maybe some stories in your classrooms or in your school that are going untold? What are we not talking about enough? Can every child see themselves, see their peers, see the world around them in the stories in our rooms, right? Maybe it's about living in a multi-generational family or growing up and moving or having a family member with a mental health issue. But I thought here we have so many brilliant thinkers in this room. If together we can crowdsource a list of stories that maybe we're not telling, we can all be more mindful about the kind of narratives that we put in front of our students every single day. So I'm going to give you guys just a couple minutes to work on that. And as you're working, I'm just going to share a little bit more. You know, I think this piece of story positions us in a place of possible. When we hear that others are experiencing the same thing, when we press pause and really listen to what's going on in the global community, we take back that piece of citizenship that Alec mentioned yesterday, right? And we really think about how can we start that narrative or start sharing a story to change a number of those things. And I think when we put people at the front of the room, we start seeing true change all around us. We have that change in our heart, right? When we start hearing stories, maybe it changes our minds, right? And when we hear stories and take action upon issues, we have the opportunity to change the whole entire world. Just this spring, Tim Cook, who is the current CEO of Apple, gave the graduation speech at MIT. And there, Tim Cook of Apple said, technology alone is not enough. It's the tech married with the arts and the humanities that make our hearts sing. When you keep people at the center of what you do, you can have an enormous impact. And I think as we see the conditions for learning change, we find ourselves at a place where we need to recognize that the human story endures, right? It's not the fancy furniture, it's not the technology, but it's what we do with it that truly matters. And I think as we, leave this special place and head back to our schools and to our classrooms with energy and passion and renewed after a fabulous weekend of learning, I think we can all make the choice to keep it about digital adventures that come from the heart. Thank you for letting me spend time with you today. Best of luck in the rest of the year.